That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life.
What is going on, all you ghosts and ghouls? You are tuned back into the Halloween Horror Pod, and boy, oh boy, do we have a good one for you today. We are ascending the mountain, and I want to say the name of this title, but before I do, legally, if you do a show about this thing, you have to say it a certain way. So me and my incredible gang that's joining me, let's just do a countdown, guys. 3, 2, 1. Resident Evil. Well, we got there. But that's right. We are talking about the indomitable, the massive, the omnipresent and judgmental, I don't know, the incredible series Resident Evil that has just spawned an infinite amount of cultural relevance. And today we're going to be doing a part 1. There's going to be 3 parts on our mainline feed here. And for today, we're going to be talking about the first 4 games. I need to introduce you to who's joining me today. I've got here Will with me. Will, how are you doing, and what is your personal favorite Resident Evil title?
Doing okay. I've been feeling a little feverish, though, the other day, ever since some random guy felt the need to bite me on the street, though. It's probably nothing, but I have been craving red meat.
I think you ate a bad Jill sandwich.
No such thing as a bad Jill sandwich, my friend.
And then we also got Tony with us. Tony, how are you, and what is your favorite Resident Evil title?
I'm doing great. My favorite, that's a big question to ask. I'd say for nostalgia purposes, Resident Evil 2. Modern day, I think Resident Evil 7.
Sorry, I forgot to answer the question. If you're going to ask me what my favorite Resident Evil is, I'm probably going to go with this set by set and say Resident Evil 2 as well.
I think that's a great choice. I was actually, for me, it's a dead heat between the Resident Evil 2 remake and 7, personally. I think they're both, I mean, you can't go wrong with most of the titles on this list and the mainline titles. So we're going to be talking about, the first big 4. Before we get to anything, I should let everyone know that we aren't technically a history podcast, so we're going to be bringing up names and times, but not going to get really into the history of Capcom or the history of the people, the producers and directors who worked on it. So I would like to encourage you to check out, there is a show called Nerd of Mouth, who is essentially our sister podcast, even though they're not aware of us at all, but this show wouldn't exist. I wouldn't be Discount Dracula, and I would have nothing to do with the Halloween Horror Pod if it weren't for Nerd of Mouth, and they have a great breakdown about the history of the people who created Resident Evil and the company where it came from. So if you want to know more about that, please check that out. But we're going to be mostly talking about our experience and the things we know. And of course, there's going to be fun facts. You're going to learn some things, I'm positive. But if you guys are down, I say we just jump right into it. In the year 1996, we get the first Resident Evil. Now, I was hardly cognizant as a 6-year-old in 1996. Anyone else have any memories from that time?
Fortunately, I didn't get a chance to sink my teeth into the first Resident Evil game when it first came out. My first Resident Evil game was actually one we're supposed to be discussing much later in the series, and it is supposedly getting its own remake very soon, Code Veronica X.
Oh, that was your first one. Wow.
Yeah, I actually bought it out of a pawn shop discount rack for $20 on the PS2, nice. And I couldn't get a hold of any of the others until I got my hands on my GameCube, which I picked up, and that's when I got Resident Evil 2.
Oh, nice.
Nice, very nice.
I only started playing Resident Evil 1 very recently, and I actually haven't even gotten to Resident Evil 3 yet. I started the remake, but I wanted to go back and play the original first.
It's much different. Tony, what is your experience with Resident Evil?
I didn't start with the first Resident Evil. I have played it since, but my first experience was Resident Evil 2, probably a couple years after it released. I want to say I was in like 4th grade. So I was probably too young to really comprehend it, but that's the perfect time to be scared out of your mind.
Yeah, I actually came across it probably the year it came out for Resident Evil 2, and that'll give us a chance to talk about gaming cafes and the 90s, and you know what, we'll just come back around to that. That'll be good stuff, and that's when we'll get to do our gush about Leon and the rest of these iconic characters. But in
Hell yeah.
1996, we get the first Resident Evil, which was directed by Shinji Mikami, produced by Takuro Fujiwara. Nailed those names. And this introduces us to some of the biggest characters that still are around, which is, of course, Barry and Rebecca. I'm just kidding. It's Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, and Wesker make their first appearance in Resident Evil 1. And I don't think any of us, besides maybe the remake, really had experience with this original one. But before I go into any more detail, Will was telling me you just beat the very first one. Did you play the remake or the OG? Like, you just finished it before we recorded this.
I just finished the OG last night around midnight, and it was quite the experience. I don't really feel like I got much I could work with lore-wise from the cast, but the final hour
the story's
or so
all
of the
nonsense.
game,
We can't even get into that.
the last hour of the game is where things really started to drive home, and I don't really know. We'll just start at the beginning. The opening cinematic, Resident Evil 1 is known today for three things. Being the godfather of survival horror, the Jill sandwich line, and the worst voice acting you will ever hear on God's green earth. But you know what? I loved it.
I love it too. So a fun fact, I guess, about that is there's no excuse for the English actors phoning it in like that. Like, I know that the technology of using voices in games was new, but if I had that opportunity, I would not phone it in as hard as like every friggin' voice actor did in the 90s. But it does leave a delightful impression to hear some of those awful line deliveries again.
I will give credit where it's due. Like, to be completely fair, video games weren't really seen as an art form until, I want to say, the era where they started to become more cinematic, probably in the PS1 age, where they actually had the chops to give something of a good theatrical presentation, like the Metal Gear series, for instance. The first game, that was exactly what you'd expect it to be. It was all cheesy action scenes. The lead character wore a bandana and nothing else on his upper body, and he was all cool and suave, and for some reason, the support girl over the radio fell in love with him by the final act. Like, can I get a bigger barrel to hold all these cliches, please? Because the 3 oil drums I brought in aren't enough. The second game is when things really started to hit their stride, like there was more analysis, more depth, more discussion. And then when we get into the same era as Metal Gear Solid 1 came out around the mid-90s and the late 90s.
Which is about the same time RE2 came out. It was a big moment for that stuff. And I think it's great
Massive improvements.
I think it's great that you brought up Metal Gear. I was actually thinking about this while making this list. It was sort of, because I grew up playing, the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis, and all that, but it was in the PS era where I really felt that shift. It was like I was growing up, I was watching the art form grow up at the same time, and it was Metal Gear Solid and Resident Evil that were like these really cool spaces in these 3D worlds to talk about characters and situations, and they're both complete nonsense, but they're both the coolest shit in the world.
The moment you get into the game, you're thinking, okay, cool, I'm going to start blowing things up, shooting people, and I'm going to run out of here with 2 girls cradling my arms like a badass while everything explodes. 3 hours into it, you're thinking, wait, the cutscene's over? God damn it, I gotta get into the next one. I want to know what happens next!
Oh, yeah, the cut. Okay, so I don't know if kids these days, as they say, know the thrill of cutscene chasing in these games.
No.
Oh, man. Do you know what I'm talking about, Tony?
Yeah. I was just watching a video where they're talking about that nostalgia factor and how it's not the same anymore because, like, in modern games, it just looks the same. But back in the day, like PS1 era, PS2 era, it's like that just dramatic change in quality of image is like, oh my god, these pixels, they look like people. What?
Oh, and like Final Fantasies, the 7, 8, 9, like when you worked hard enough and long enough to get to a point where there was a cutscene, it was like your birthday. It was like someone was giving you a gift.
Absolutely.
And Resident Evil accomplished that as well. So a couple big things about the first Resident Evil is it is a spiritual successor to a Nintendo game called Sweet Home, which I know very little about, but it contained a cast of characters that each had a specific tool, and you would need to utilize them all to solve puzzles. And in classic Resident Evil fashion, it was entirely possible to waste your resources and be unable to complete the game. Has that happened to any of you guys? I bet all of us that's happened at least once in our early days of playing these.
I don't think I had that happen on RE, like the original Resident Evils. I probably had to go back a save or so on Resident Evil 2, but Code Veronica was a big one.
I was going to bring
I know
up
we're going to talk more about that later.
Yeah, I was going to
that
bring
one has that hard moment where if you don't have the right ammo, it's like nearly impossible to beat the boss, and you just get hard locked.
Yeah, I'd say Resident Evil 1 and Code Veronica are the famously most difficult as far as being unable to finish it at all by having no ammo.
You know, I was going to say no, but you just reminded me. There is one moment, exactly one in Code Veronica, no less, where I wasn't able to finish the game because in the second act, you get the sniper rifle, which is the only weapon in the entire game that gives you perspective aiming. You have to aim down the scope and shoot the boss Nosferatu in the heart. I want to say 3 times on the normal mode. And if you miss too many times, squander ammo on some other target, thinking, oh cool, I got a sniper rifle and I can fine aim. I'm just going to use all this up until I find more ammo. About that.
Yeah.
Then, yes, you are burnt toast in that fight. I was going to use much more vulgar language, but we try to keep this PG-13.
Well, this show is primarily for kids, so watch your mouth.
Which is why we're here.
The couple things that were established in the first Resident Evil, I mean, you've got the mansion or the fixed interconnective environment where you have to solve puzzles and acquire items to move throughout it and progress. And, of course, the ink ribbons. How do you guys feel about the ink ribbon system?
The ink ribbon system didn't really affect me because I was already used to games with limited saves, and I was pretty good at like bookmarking my progress and choosing my fights carefully, but I always played the classic Resident Evils on the easiest mode first because I figured out very early on this isn't a game about skill so much as it's about picking your fights and clearing certain paths. And that was pretty much the only way I was able to get through. Granted, training mode in the original games is so easy you could cry, because you can blow through ammo like nobody's business and still have a stockpile. But the ink ribbon system, as far as saving goes, it didn't really bother me because it felt like a game where if you knew what to do and where to go, you could make progress in long chunks, and by the time I ended up finishing out the game, I probably had, on average, double digits of ink ribbons left, at least 10 or 20.
Tony, your ink ribbon impression?
Yeah, it's one of those things I don't really miss. Like, I think it's fun that it's like a challenge thing.
Yeah.
Just because I grew up playing RPG, so I'm a save every fucking 10 minutes kind of guy. Like,
so am I.
Oh, I did something better
constantly.
I can manage it with the Resident Evil games and stuff, but it's hard. It's hard to flip the switch back and forth sometimes.
I think that's pretty well said. Well, because none of us, well, I guess Will has a very recent and intimate relationship in the first Resident Evil. Before we talk a bit about the director's cut, was there anything else you wanted to say about this first entry? Because we could roast all day on the voice acting and the use of full cinematics. Oh, that does remind me, though, this also introduced the long-standing trend of pre-rendered environments, which, in my opinion, is one of the coolest parts of the Resident Evil series. All right, in 1997, we get director's cut of the first game. Now, this made a couple big changes and introduced a couple things that would carry on and become one of those really cool staples of the franchise. And that includes changing difficulty, which isn't always around, but you could choose a difficulty. But it had unlockable costumes, multiple endings, and every time you picked up an ink ribbon, you'd get 3 of them, which I very much appreciate. And it introduced auto-aim for the first time, which would go away for 2 and 3 in America, but had been around from the first game, which is called Biohazard in Japan, I meant to say. The auto-aim feature, they just took away for America because they just thought we'd have more fun making it more difficult. It's like the first instance I've heard of them making it harder for a Western audience.
You know, now that you mention it, that's true. The European and Japanese originals usually were more difficult. In fact, I'd like to give a nod to the Devil May Cry series, which actually did spawn from Resident Evil 4.
Yes, and Resident Evil 4 was what became Devil May Cry.
But I found out later on that the third entry in the DMC series, it turns out the Western hard mode was the Japanese normal mode.
No kidding.
So, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that tracks.
That game is hard as fuck. That original Devil May Cry 3, just the normal mode is brutal enough. That's crazy.
It has RPG syndrome is what I've nicknamed it, wherein the earlier you are in the game, the harder it gets, simply because your margin for error is narrower, you have fewer abilities and weapons, and you have no idea what the fuck you're doing.
Yeah, which is kind of the name of the game for this cast of characters I'm going to name. And so let me name a couple more of them and butcher these. So in 1998, and this is for a lot of people the reason for the season, if not for, but this is Resident Evil 2. directed by Hideki Kamiya, produced this time by Shinji Mikami. Tony, you and I, this was our first Resident Evil. I'd love to hear about how you experienced this for the first time.
Yeah, I vaguely remember going to a used game store with a friend and picking it out because like we'd heard Resident Evil and like from cousins or whatnot, older people in our lives. And we're like, oh, this could be so cool. And then we got it home to his house. And I remember we popped it in and we're both alone in his room, middle of the night playing it. And we're both terrified. And I remember the scariest moment was in the interrogation room when the liquor jumps through the freaking glass. Like, I like, it's still like in my heart. I like one of the scariest moments I've had gaming. Like,
I still have liquor trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like the scariest enemy in video game history.
Yeah. And so playing the remake, that was hard to go through and see it. And I'm like, they're going to be so much scarier.
That was originally released for the PlayStation, but it got ported to other systems. A lot of these games are going to be ported to a lot of other systems, but for the sake of time and patience, I'm just going to mention the first ones they come out with, but if we have other memories associated with other systems, yada, yada, yada. I first played this one at a gaming cafe in a mall in Seattle in 1998. My mom used to dump me off at gaming cafes so she could just go do stuff, without me around, and I was perfectly happy with it. And it was the year Resident Evil 2 had come out, and I'd never played anything like it before. I was just blown away, and I eventually found a copy at a garage sale a year or two later for the Nintendo 64, and so then I had it at home. And what was nice about the 64 release of Resident Evil 2 was that you could change the color of the blood. The only thing that bothered my mom about violent games was the red blood. It is what it is, but you could change it to green or blue for the Nintendo version, and the game was pretty much
the things you're killing. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and so I'll always appreciate that option for that version of that game. Will, what's your relationship with Resident Evil 2?
Resident Evil 2 was a game I heard my cousins gush about constantly for several months, and I just kept thinking, I really wish I could get my hands on this game, but I could never find it, and I never had the money for it because kid living out in the sticks, and Dad worked his butt off for every dollar he earned, so I felt bad asking for just goodies like that. But several years later, I picked up a Nintendo GameCube because I wanted exclusively to play the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess game, which to this day still holds up, if you ask me. I must have played through it 5 times.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And I went to GameStop and found Resident Evil 2, I want to say for about $12, and even back then that was cheap. I picked it up, I popped it in, and I went absolutely nuts. Especially finally getting my formal introduction to, I'm pretty sure, the character who's known for the reason most kids in the 90s hit puberty early and is notorious for that perfect haircut.
Well, either protagonist. You know what? Let's just talk about that, because in the first game we've got the iconic Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Wesker, but in Resident Evil 2 we get Claire Redfield. She's cool, but we get the goat of all goats in Leon Kennedy, and I think this is the time of the podcast where we just talk about how fucking cool Leon is.
Hell yeah.
Well, from some history that I've seen, if you don't mind me just jumping in.
Oh, please.
Apparently, I've seen some indications that Leon was actually the son of either a soldier or a cop, and he decided to enlist in, I want to say, his hometown of Raccoon City as a police officer, and he was just a local kid. He wanted to help his community, and he figured that the most exciting part of his life would be breaking up bar fights and writing out parking tickets. But on his first day on the job, he's on his way to his post. His very first day, he hadn't even gotten his welcome party yet.
Yeah, the remake really sells that with some of the environmental details of them having been prepared to welcome Leon for his first day before everything went to hell, that I really appreciated.
I distinctly remember bumping into the man. I can't remember, was his name?
Oh, the cop guy.
When you first bump into him, he mentioned something that
Marvin Branagh.
Thank you. Marvin tells you that something went wrong with your welcome party, and you see all the party supplies and the hats and streamers and everything.
Yeah.
And you can tell that this is just a sleepy little mountain community ready to welcome this doe-eyed kid with open arms, because back then, small communities with local cops, you had maybe a couple of dozen of these guys, and all they ever did was walk down the street smiling, and once in a while you'd see them pull their gun on a guy that needed his ass whipped.
Yeah, Raccoon City, they describe it as a major American city, but you get the small town vibe from it.
I think it was because Leon was likely posted out in the smaller area, and he was just going to be in the larger precinct for a while. No, maybe the more I think about that, the less that makes sense. But the structure in the older games didn't really go perfectly together.
Can you imagine if you go to your first day of work, and not only does all this awful shit happen, but at the end of your first day of work, the city you live in is nuked by the American government? Just insane.
You mean go to work and before it's even sunup, a fuel truck explodes, zombies are running around, and there's not even any coffee?
Oh, and you've you've also murdered many things and encountered zombie dogs and lickers and all the awful things that happened to Leon. And we'll
lived in Alaska in the 90s, did you?
I want to talk a bit more about Leon because, in part 3 of our Resident Evil series, we're going to dive into Requiem. I'm halfway through. Tony's beaten it, but I think that we can agree that Leon is an overpowered killing machine in Requiem. Yeah, and it's because, and I love it because the shit that Leon has been through with Resident Evil 2 and 4 and 6, by the time you get to 9, it's just like when Leon walks in the room, he's like, okay, everybody sit down and shut the fuck up. I'm in control right now.
Okay, assholes. I've got a burger waiting for me at home, and it's my night for watching TV and doing nothing. You better have a good fucking reason for this.
I've kicked like 9 gods in the balls. You want to fuck with me? Shit down. Like it's...
Guys, let's put it this way. I've been through as much shit as Kratos has, and I still have my hair!
Yeah, Leon, exactly. He looks great.
Leon is like the corny, cheesy action hero. Like, he does all the amazing stuff, and then, like, you have the more stoic Chris, who's just like, yeah, fuck this, I'm punching this boulder out of my way.
Yeah.
But he doesn't, like, have as many one-liners. Whereas, like, Leon, every chance he gets, he's like, oh, yeah, I wrote this one down just in case this happened.
Chris is an interesting character to me. He's kind of heel turn, but not really. He's just a very serious guy, for better or for worse. But I think he's a perfectly competent protagonist. Nothing against Chris Redfield, but when it comes to leading characters, Leon, Claire, and Jill, I think take the cake for me.
I think the way we can describe protagonists best, in my opinion, is with one word. And with Chris, I think we can describe him as professional. Because he steps onto the scene, he assesses the situation, exchanges pleasantries, shakes the hands he needs to, tells his boys what the job is, gets it done, and makes sure as many people get out alive as possible. With Jill, we get the sense of professionalism as well, but I also feel like as the games go on, we get weary from her because she's starting to recognize her age. She's starting to understand that the things that are happening aren't normal. They shouldn't be happening, but something still needs to be done. So why don't we go with driven for her? Like,
I like it.
She isn't going to be stopped. And as badass as Leon is and as powerful as Chris is, Jill is sheer willpower. She got away from Nemesis, she tore her way through Raccoon City, and she didn't take any shit from that slickback sunglasses sporting jackass when he shoved her in a jail cell, saying, wait here, you're gonna be tyrant food.
We should
so Jill Valentine can't be stopped.
We should get a Resident Evil sequel that's like Final Fantasy X-2, just with all the ladies. We get Claire, Jill, Ada, and they're all working together to fight something and have super...
I'd absolutely love it.
Yeah. It just everything goes smoothly, nobody dies.
yeah, it's actually just a volleyball, like dead or alive volleyball game.
I'd love to hear a few nods, like, Let's go for an example of what happens in Resident Evil Village, where you get thrown into a gauntlet, chased all the way down, and suddenly there's a meat grinder tackling you, and after the end of it, we get... I want to go with Claire, because she's probably my favorite Resident Evil lady. She just crawls out, dusts herself off, and says, how does Leon do this?
I was almost a Claire sandwich.
That's actually dude, have you played Revelations 2?
I played pretty... Okay, so that's another thing about me and my relationship with this series, is besides Survivor and Dead Aim, I don't think there's a single Resident Evil title I've missed. Dino Crisis as well, but that's for another conversation.
Oh boy.
Right. But yeah, in Revelations 2, I almost lost it when she got out of the trash compactor and said, "Yeah, I was almost a Claire sandwich." Oh my God, does Barry tell everyone that story?
I did
You're
not.
goddamn right he does. It's a great story.
I actually did not know about that line in that game. I did not mean to repeat that. That's hilarious. But going back to Resident Evil 2 real quick before we move on, I mean, the thing's iconic. It's great. You love Resident Evil. You know Resident Evil 2. The pre-rendered backgrounds are just pushed up better. The delivery of the story and the environment of that police station and everything around it is stronger. It's a hell of a game. And if you never got around to it, if you're going to start anywhere with Resident Evil, probably Resident Evil 2, if you want to check out the old school versions. Personally, I think the remake of Resident Evil 2 is the peak of the peak, but it's a completely different style of gameplay. So however you want to approach it, you really can't go wrong with Resident Evil 2.
And I'd just like to give a quick shout out to you Sony console players out there. All of the Resident Evil games as of recording are currently on sale. At least the older ones are. I actually just found out that Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, including several of the remakes, are on sale for as much as 50% off. So now's a great time to dive into it. And that's
Well, and if you have the premium PlayStation, it's included. Or if you previously bought them on PS3, they'll be free as well.
I was just about to say that if you own them on your PS3, you can now just download them again on your PS5. And
they are also on GOG and Steam now.
Yep, there's a lot of ways to access it. I'm an 1997 PlayStation guy, and I never looked back. So if I were, listening, that would be for me.
Before we move on, though, there was one thing I wanted to give a shout out to Resident Evil 4.
Sure.
I wanted to mention this during Res 1, but we kind of just jumped out. There is a structure I noticed of the games that kind of rattled loose in my mind when I was playing Res 1. They've got sort of a tree or a branching path thing, but then a convergence when it comes to their puzzle solving. Because every single game, you're basically just dropped in and said, "Good luck, bye." And when you get in, you start poking at objects, running with interactables, then suddenly you find an item to pick up. But as you go through, you just mill your way through one item after another. Next thing you know, you've got a dozen key items in your hands, and before you know it, your inventory's full, your item box, you're visiting that thing more often than the Louvre.
I'm just so used to Resident Evil, I didn't even think to mention that another thing the series introduced, you have the inventory management, the things you can and shouldn't hold, the things you need to store in a storage box and carry around. That's a big running bit in the series.
I also didn't know that in the first Resident Evil, when you're playing as Chris, so I ended up doing this kind of on the hardest way I could, Chris only has 6 inventory slots, whereas Jill has 8 and an unlimited use lockpick, whereas Chris also has to find small keys to open, like, desks, tables, drawers, and they usually contain helpful resources like ammunition and medical supplies.
That's an excellent. That's another excellent point. Is that a big thing that this series did? From its very introduction was multiple protagonists with changing routes and different puzzle setups and story events that happen depending on who you're choosing, which a big deal at the time.
One major change I did notice is a trope of the series seems to be that when you're playing through the game, you end up playing as a temporary protagonist, which is kind of a sidekick or partner to the one you selected. For instance, we've got Chris, and I actually didn't know this. There are a total of 3 sequences, or maybe it was just 2, where you play directly as Rebecca Chambers, the medical officer for the STARS Bravo team. And, oh no, I think she was with STARS Alpha, and Chris was Bravo. I got that wire across her leg.
Let's see. I'd be curious, Tony. For the first game, are you more of a Chris man or a Jill man? And for the second, are you a Leon or a Claire man?
I like playing as Jill in the first game, and then the second one. When I first started, I played as Claire, but now I tend to go Leon first.
Yeah.
But I do like Claire, especially with the bow gun.
Oh yeah, I forgot that's another thing. They get unique weapons as well that are fun to experiment with.
Claire's a lady that likes her grenade launcher, and Leon gets a big ass freaking Magnum. And I don't need to tell you what the implication is with that thing.
He doesn't need it. You can just tell he's got that energy.
Oh no, man! I'm not talking about that Magnum.
Yeah. And multiple endings. Multiple endings are going to be a consistent thing through a lot of these, not all of them. And unlockable costumes, other scenarios, things like that. And famously in Resident Evil 2, you could unlock a third scenario where you play as Barry, and then if you do well in that, you unlock a fourth scenario where you play as a big piece of tofu, which, I mean, how cool can you get?
And there was the alternate screen at the end for Tofu, where when you finished it, you had the helicopter passenger eating a bowl of hot pot with 4 big blocks of tofu right there.
Oh,
so,
jeez.
Great job. Now you're my lunch.
Yikes. I didn't know that about the end.
The thing I wanted to double back on was the branching path and then converging goals of the riddles was you'd find multiple key items for the inventory management, which made it a nightmare, but as you start to get through the game, you notice that you use this item to get that item to get that item, and then you get this thing, and it's a set of key items that usually involve, in the case of Resident Evil 1, it was little medallions that had different, like, celestial bodies. The sun, the stars, the moon, etc. And the next game, you had it focusing on, I think it was the plaques in the police station lobby, and I enjoyed that you follow basically what are miniature quest chains to get to the ultimate goal and then move on to the next area. And then it just starts over again, but while it is the same formulaically, it's still engaging.
If you're a longtime Resident Evil fan, you are no stranger to collecting plaques, gems, and keys. That's for sure.
Don't forget to examine and flip it around.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I didn't learn that one until later.
Yeah, there's the examining the items, and then you could, like... Yeah, when I first figured that out, because this was before, you know, everyone just had the ability to Google everything. You actually had to figure these things out as you were playing. And when you're a 9-year-old, you know, and you figure out, like, oh, if I flip this briefcase around, I can open it, and there's something inside. What have I been missing?
Oh, yeah. Then you go back and examine literally every item to see, hold on, can I, engage a burst fire on my handgun, or can I see if there are any extra bullets in the bottom of this box?
Yeah, and it teaches you to look right down the barrel of a gun when you're a child, flip it around, point it right at yourself, and look into it. So it's a good lesson.
There could be a secret in here.
There could be a secret in here. Is this the gem?
Hey, why does it smell like gun oil? What happens if I squeeze it?
Oh, God.
So in 1999, we get Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And this was directed by Katsuhiro Ayama and produced by Shinji Mikami, a name that's going to come up over and over and over. And in this one, you play as Jill Valentine, and it introduces a game-breaking mechanic where you are being stalked by the Nemesis monster. And I gotta tell you, man, it's a very solid game, but that was almost too stressful for me. I do not like being stalked. What was your guys' experience with Nemesis, Tony?
My first experience with Resident Evil 3 was a few years after Resident Evil 2. I remember I was at my dad's, and he rented us a game, and I was playing it, and I remember I screamed from the room because I opened a door and a bunch of zombies came rushing out at me, and then he realized what he rented for me and took it away.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he wasn't down with the scary stuff. My mom didn't care, but
I had to play it at a friend's house. My next door neighbor had like pretty much everything, and his parents didn't care what he played. And we were playing that together, and we had a couple like scream moments as well. But I couldn't tell my mom that I was playing it because there was no way to change the blood color. So she just assumed we were playing that Star Wars pod racing game when we were really just playing Nemesis the whole time.
Sorry, Mom, I'm fighting a zombie. I mean, Ewoks.
Will, what was your experience with RE3?
Unfortunately, I didn't get to play it myself firsthand, but I did end up watching a Let's Play of it several years ago. Not a lot of it did stick, but now that I've got it, I plan to play it in the very near future. And the things I do know are, one, Jill, why the fuck are you wearing a tube top? It's the apocalypse.
I got something to say on that, but please continue.
And Nemesis, it's relentless, it's iconic, and it's terrifying, but there is one thing I know. When you get to the end of the game and you take whatever it was at the end, I can't remember if it was a rocket launcher, a grenade launcher, or a freaking railgun, is what some accounts are giving me. When you finally have that amorphous mass of aggravating ass jackass, and yes, I just said ass 3 times, what are you going to do about it? And you stare it down, lock in, pull the trigger, and say, go the fuck away for the last time and send this bastard to a vapor cloud in hell where he belongs. That's the moment you play that whole game for. Games where you're being stalked by something invincible, that's the moment you live for, is the comeuppance. You finally get to look this thing in the eye and tell it, leave me alone. I warned you. Goodbye.
That's a great moment. But it's a great experience, especially in the early games. It is one of the biggest criticisms of the series I've heard is how people feel like the later chunk of the games, you're just a walking arsenal and it takes the fear away. And I'm like, yeah, but
It's so funny. Maybe in the newer ones, but in those original ones, I felt pretty desperate every moment until the end credits, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I feel like it's more so in the later titles. Like even Resident Evil 7, the later chunk, felt a little shallow because it's like, fuck this. Like I have so much ammo. I have literally I am the arsenal.
Yeah.
Just running through magnum, just annihilating the enemies.
And we'll talk about that in Requiem, but I think that there's a great catharsis in the way that they use Leon in that game because you get the full fear when you play Grace and you go through so much and it's so tense and then you get this respite where you just get to kick every fucking ass in the room like it's made out of paper when you play as Leon and it just feels so good.
Yeah.
That is another thing that I wanted to bring up. One of the most interesting things about the games as you play through them is the overlap that you get with each protagonist. Because in the first one, it feels kind of like you've got a separate campaign going on. There's Chris and his shenanigans. He bumps into Rebecca once in a while.
Yeah.
And he doesn't see Jill till almost the end of the game. And you've got Jill over here, her fiasco going on with Barry, and the only thing that really connects them is Wesker at the end where they see each other. However, in 2, I appreciated that they were both running around doing their own thing, and they could have linked up and united, but they don't because Leon is trying to... Actually, I don't know what kept separating Leon from everybody else, but I think he was just trying to see...
The story is pretty much indecipherable.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But basically, at the end of the day, the goal is to survive this mess.
Exactly. It's still a blast, but if you ask me, what the plot of Resident Evil 1 until right now is, I have no idea, man. I just like playing the games.
The plot is you've been dropped in the middle of nowhere, you're looking for survivors, and then you try to figure out who the traitor is.
It's got, Kingdom Hearts level nonsense going on.
They definitely get wild, especially with all the crazy mutations and who's infected with what. They were cured, but now they're not cured, and
because they're cured, now that's a problem, and now they have something else going on because they were cured, and what was used to cure them. It's a whole. It's pretty much just anime cops, but it makes less sense than most of the best animes. It's probably both the hardest and most nonsensical series that are worldwide beloved. Or beloved worldwide.
I can't wait until you beat Requiem.
I'm so stoked.
Hear some of the dumb nonsense from the ending of that
one. Basically,
oh man.
By the sounds of things, Leon will get to the end of the fiasco, waste all the monsters, then turn around and say, "Okay, time to go home and do my taxes."
Yeah,
and then there's I'm halfway through. Right, we'll talk about Requiem later. I'm halfway through. I don't know what's going on, but I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Oh, it's a blast.
That's Resident Evil in a nutshell.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and you had mentioned Jill, since we're still on Resident Evil 3, you mentioned Jill Valentine's police-issued tube top. I think one of the worst movies I ever saw in theaters was Resident Evil 2, and that's pretty much, it's a really... diarrhea loose retelling of Resident Evil 3. And in it, my mom took me and my friend because we were underage, and she'd never seen a Resident Evil movie. I didn't know what to expect. And of course, we're watching it, and it was just such hot garbage. And we were just laughing and laughing. And the first thing that kicked us off was my mom leaned over to my friends and said, "Do you think that thong is police issued?"
You only get that when you hit stars. Amazing.
Yeah, well,
you should see Chris's.
There's a part at the end where Nemesis shoots a rocket launcher at them, and they jump into a dumpster to protect themselves.
Man.
Oh, there's another scene where a bunch of zombies, they're trying to get up to the top of a building to a helipad, and a bunch of zombies are following them, and then they zoom out to show how many zombies are going up these stairs, and if you look, you can see 5 of them using the handrail to go up the stairs. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But that was just an aside on the Resident Evil 2 movie while we were talking about 3. I was just thinking about the police issue tube top and thong and the handrail using zombies.
I will say credit where it's due. Yeah, Resident Evil, what was that one, Apocalypse? Wasn't awful. It was mindless fun. It's not going to make anyone's AAA list, and it's not a movie worth paying $30 for a ticket, $90 for snacks. But it was fun. I will say it was fun.
I don't want to go down too much of a movie rabbit hole, but please, Tony, what do you have to say about the movies here?
I think the first one is genuinely an interesting kind of reimagining of like the universe. Like I was like, it's okay for a budget film. I didn't understand why they like changed so much of it. I know some of it was to like add kills and whatnot, so it's entertaining. And then the second one was where I was like, because I'm like they're taking away from the characters that they're introducing to make the new character do the ship that the characters did. And then the third one, I was like, wait, what? No, the world didn't die. Like, what? What is this? And then I think I watched the fourth one with my roommate, and I was like, I'm done with this series. So I haven't watched any of the other ones.
I never made it past probably the third one. I don't even know if I made it to the end of that one. I was just so disappointed in all of them. I just couldn't continue.
I was entertained for dumb action movie, not for Resident Evil though. Like it was.
Yeah, maybe I just wasn't in the right mindset. Because I'm such a fanboy. So and when I was watching them, I was at the perfect age to be a pretentious teenage dickhead. So that makes sense why I haven't revisited them. But maybe I should.
I personally found myself enjoying the movies because I was such a fanboy, because I'd sit there and I'd wait for the cameos from the game characters. They're the ones I was there for.
Right.
And when Jill was on screen, I wasn't as familiar with her, but when she waltzes into a police station, sees these growling fiends cuffed to these terrified civilians, and just starts popping heads in the middle of a police station, the lieutenant comes out and says, "What the fuck are you doing in my police station, woman? I told you, these are zombies. You shoot them in the head and ask questions never. Were you not listening?" That's fun.
Did we mention during RE1 the live action like film that they put into it, and like how none of those actors were credited?
No, we actually didn't. Please.
Yeah, like none of the actors are credited. It was like a few years ago, the fandom came together and hunted them down and figured out like who they were. So now they've been getting to go to conventions and stuff.
Oh, we should
for
mention
their live action depictions.
That you're referring to the fact that in RE1 there were full video cutscenes, and you mean the actors that performed in those cutscenes.
Yes, as like the different characters for Resident Evil 1, because obviously after that they went digital video, like FMVs and stuff, like cutscenes, but they had live action like footage that they worked into the game, which was also like mind blowing as a kid,
Oh yeah. You never seen anything like
live action.
It's hard to express to the young people these days. Like I said, I watched the entire industry grow up as I was growing up.
Yeah,
pretty much like right with it, and so I was at the perfect age to have my mind blown to going from Ninja Turtles on the Super Nintendo to seeing Metal Gear Solid or live action Resident Evil cutscenes. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
I did appreciate all the quirks as the games evolve in things like Metal Gear, where they know they can't do things like lip movement or hand adjustments, but when you get things like at the end of Metal Gear Solid 1, where Liquid folds his fingers out, the only time you see an unbunched fist as a hand in the game, or the little quirk of, in Metal Gear 1, the characters' heads shake as they speak to make it clear which one is speaking.
Good call, good point.
Being blended in to help people understand while also working within their limitations and then slowly overcoming them, that is an extremely satisfying thing to see as the series has evolved.
I remember when the PS2 first came out, the thing that blew my mind was that when the characters spoke, their mouths matched the words they were saying. Was just like watching like SmackDown, like the wrestling game. And, The Rock would be like, "You smell what The Rock is cooking," and his mouth would make those shapes. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in the future now.
That's it. Like Final Fantasy X was the big one that broke my brain. Like I remember because I didn't have a PS2 yet, and I went to my dad's, and my uncle had just got a PS2, Final Fantasy X, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. And I popped it in, and that intro scene, that metal song, I was like, oh my God.
That beginning for Final Fantasy X, it especially if you were there right when it happened, It was so revolutionary. Not only the big sweeping score, the big environmental art piece, the cinematography of the characters, the way that their fingers are individual digits, the way their mouths match their words, just all of it. It was just such a technical display to witness at that time. So I'm glad that you brought back that memory for me.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me going into the PS2 era was, I think it was Grand Theft Auto 3 was the first game I played.
I was never allowed to. I never have tried it.
They drop us into the middle of everything, and basically what we see is you're seeing fire that isn't a 2D image of 3 different frames.
Oh, yeah, you could walk around and watch the object on fire.
You could see more than 3 feet in front of you being rendered at a time. The world was actually coming to life. You felt like you were in a real world, and they did things that you noticed today but didn't notice back then. It's foggy out, so you can cut down on the rendering distance. When you have a car or see certain people walking around, you notice, there are a lot of that exact person walking around. But back then, this is a thing where, the facial movements, they were a little awkward, but it was like a comic book game. The character didn't really talk, and the physics didn't really line up. But you know what? We're not driving around in what looks like a shoebox with the wheels painted on. And the characters, not only are they talking, but their faces are moving. And last but not least, as I said, when you're driving down the road doesn't look like it's being deconstructed behind you and reconstructed in front of you every 10 feet. You could actually see the environment ahead of you. And that was probably the coolest thing to my mind. It's the thing I remember to this day, was noticing that the cliff faces weren't being constructed right in front of me as I drove down.
Which is something we talked about when we did our Silent Hill episode, is the fog was very much a way to cover that stuff up.
The procedural loading.
Yeah.
But then we come back to the modern era and we realize if the fog hadn't been there, we'd have missed it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I do think that this is the perfect segue into Resident Evil 4.
I was about to
talk about that today.
I was about to say, so we're talking about the way the world's changing, the world of gaming is changing, technology is increasing. In between Resident Evil 3, which was 1999, and Resident Evil 4, which was 2005, there's 2 more big, I guess they're mainline, but I'm going to treat them as spin-offs. We get Code Veronica in 2000 and Zero in 2002, and I do want to save our deep discussions on those, but I had Code Veronica on the Dreamcast when it first dropped in the year 2000. It was very confusing and very hard for me. I was never able to finish it. I either used all my resources or got completely lost, which is a constant problem I have with these first 3, well, I guess with Veronica and Zero, those first 5 Resident Evil games, is there comes a point where I just get hopelessly lost, and I don't know if anyone else has that experience.
It is easy to get lost in those older games especially, but basically when I got lost or frustrated in things like Code Veronica, I'd either do a little light research, which I don't think I ever had to with that one in particular, or for the most part, I just kept running around. I think the only thing I had to look up was, like we discussed earlier, the fact that you had to take certain items and spin them around in the viewer to get them to open.
Right.
We had... I think the first one was an upgrade kit for Claire's pistol, and I retuned it with, like, the burst fire and the shoulder stock. But as I went through the game, I realized, if that thing has to be looked at from another angle, then why am I carrying a flower pot? I looked inside it. Hello, Mr. Jewel. And that was all she wrote.
And I just can't stop looking inside the guns.
The fun one was when you get into the later era and you actually look down the barrel of the gun, you can see the tip of the bullet, and you're thinking, oh, that's cool. I'm looking down the barrel of a gun, and I'm a grown-ass man.
Here, Tony,
a great example for children.
Before we get to Resident Evil 4, Tony, any quick thoughts about Veronica or Zero?
Oh, man. Code Veronica, I played it on the PS2. I remember I wanted to play it so bad when it was out on the Dreamcast. I didn't have a Dreamcast. I had I think it was Game Now, which a gaming magazine, and it had a guide for Code Veronica. And I remember poring over that, being like, oh, man, these bosses look insane. And
it's a really good game. It's just hard as hell.
Yeah, and then I found out they released it on PS2, and I snatched that thing up so fast. I was playing through it with a friend, and one of the points, it was at his house, and I remember he played when I wasn't there and used up a bunch of the fucking grenade ammo.
Then you're just screwed.
I'm on the plane fighting the tyrant, I think they were, and I couldn't beat it because I just didn't have the ammo, and like now I know to save, and it was just he had saved a bunch, and I'm like, you are an idiot. You are so bad at these games. You're not allowed to play this without me anymore. And it took me like a long time to go back and do it myself. Like I'm like, I'm not playing with him anymore.
That did teach me the basic point of if you've got a handgun and there's a zombie, you only use the handgun. If you've got the shotgun, you still only use the handgun unless there's a bigger threat. If you've got... Basically, you save your strongest weapon for a genuine emergency, and I'd end up finishing out the game with several extra magnum rounds or grenades.
Yeah. Oh, that's me with every game. Like the
elixirs.
Yeah, I was just going to say elixirs in Final Fantasy. I never use them, and then I'll finish the game with like 28 of them.
And before we proceed to 4, I did want to give a shout out to Resident Evil 0 because it was a lot of fun being able to play as Rebecca, and I actually got some insight that I saw when I was playing Resident Evil 1 for the first time. No, this girl has grit. She just looked a trained Marine with tattoos and a broken set of handcuffs in his eye and told him, "You try anything, I will plug your ass." And she's going into this, we're getting the odd shriek, we're getting the mournful cry as she sees a zombified member of her team that she was just speaking to several hours ago. But you know what? This girl isn't running, she isn't scared, and I also get a look into who she is in Resident Evil 1. Okay, first, she finds her friend dying of venom poisoning in the hallway. She runs across this mansion like a freaking jackrabbit out of hell, gets the antidote, runs it back to him, and doesn't even flinch. Then she finds him being strangled to death by a bunch of living, blood-sucking vines, runs off, mixes the serum to kill the thing, takes it directly to its taproot, and kills it just like that, and still isn't scared. And then, dude, this kid's like what was Rebecca at the time of Resident Evil 1, 19?
Yeah.
She set off a bomb in a power room underground, rode the elevator to the top, jumped on the chopper, and just went right the fuck to sleep on the cot.
Well, what I was going to say about Rebecca is that I think she is one of the most criminally underappreciated characters in Resident Evil. So Zero's an okay game.
I wholeheartedly agree.
I love the aesthetic of the game. I think the train's a really cool setting. I think it looks gorgeous, especially on the GameCube, which I still have my physical copy of, and the Resident Evil 1 remake. But
I like the thing that they did with the other games where you actually have them actively switching between two characters.
So I didn't love that mechanic in Zero.
In each room. I appreciated the extra inventory space, the added firepower, and I usually just had the other member right on my heels as we were running around.
Right.
And use them carefully like party management in an RPG. I kept one as the medic and the other as the tank, and things seemed to work out fine. And on a second playthrough, when I knew something dangerous was coming, I'd send the Marine in.
Well, I think we should... I could talk about Zero all day. I had a big relationship with this game, but I do want to save that for another episode about offshoots. So I think to get us back on this train here, we were talking about, at this time, between Veronica and Zero, the Resident Evil series had kind of stagnated a little bit. They were all solid games, but there hadn't really been any big revolutionary changes. But as we were saying earlier, the technology was, and you could do a lot more interesting things in the 3D space than they ever could before with the mainline titles. There's a big history to how Resident Evil 4 came to be. It originally started out as what would become Devil May Cry, but in the sake of just sticking to our guns here, it's 2005, Resident Evil 4 drops on the GameCube and absolutely blows the minds of everyone in the world. I was there right at the beginning. First time I played it was actually at a Walmart when they used to have games that you could just play on their stands, but you'd have to crane your neck up and it would hurt after like 10 minutes, so you'd have to stop, and that was how that's how they controlled people playing it, or, not spending too much time playing it. I remember just having that first encounter with that zombie, and it was like, oh my God, the behind the camera perspective was so good, the controls were so fluid, and then it was like, I can shoot him anywhere and it'll have a different, I can shoot the weapon out of his hand, I can drop him to his knees by shooting him into the leg. Once again, I was like, oh my God, I'm in the future.
Yeah. mind-blowing like that.
Yeah, Tony, what was your experience with RE4?
My first experience, my friend had bought it. I didn't have a GameCube, but my friend had bought it. So I'm 15, staying over at my friend's. We got our sodas, our snacks. We're locked and loaded for the weekend.
Hell yeah.
It's storming. So there's that added atmosphere going on outside. We're playing in the dark, and I remember we like made it into the castle, and there's just like wind blowing, and like the windows are rattling, just extra scaring the shit out of us.
That's excellent.
It's a good time. Like that, yeah, a lot of good experiences with that friend. Different friend, not the same guy that played Code Veronica that I stopped playing with.
Well, I think that absolutely matters. If you don't let us know the exact friend, I think this pod is over.
Yeah, exactly. You need to know the context. I never did play Resident Evil with the other friend again.
The one who wasted all your Veronica resources?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not friends anymore.
Yeah,
not
because
for
of
related
that.
reasons. We just grew apart. But
Dude, he used up all of your grenades without asking first.
Yeah.
I've heard of countries going to war over less.
yeah,
That's
we
just
got
not
locked.
Cool.
We got soft locked.
I'm not crap about soft locks, hard locks, or padlocks. Man, if you use up a friend's grenades without asking, friendship over.
Hey guys,
or you replace them.
Should we start a Resident Evil themed band called Softlock? I think we have to.
Yes.
Yes. Will, what was your experience with Resident Evil 4?
It's the early 2000s. VHS and DVD are still war. And there is this wonderful place called Blockbuster Video.
Oh, I miss it so much.
I walk into there, I rent the new Resident Evil game for $10 and take it home, and I've got 5 days to mess with this gem. And I'm playing it sitting on the bed in the living room, on the fold-out sofa bed to be specific, and my dad's sitting there, he glances over, sees me playing this new game, and he's so invested in this, he sits there, and it's basically my first Let's Play, because he's sitting there watching me play the whole damn thing every free moment
I
he's
probably
got
would have done that too.
while
If I rented
my
a
face
game
is
for my
moving on the
kid
screen.
and it was as interesting as Resident Evil 4, I'd probably sit there and watch it too, because we really can't understate that nothing was like this game when it came out.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Quite. And here's the deal. The behind-the-back camera perspective was one thing, but let's just appreciate this real quick. We're talking about a game that is so amazing and so badass that its scraps became their own franchise, okay? 3 games spawned out of this game's prototype process, and then we got Resident Evil 4.
I know about
And
Devil
this
May
is-
Cry.
It was
Onimusha.
Devil May Cry
Oh God, I love Onimusha.
and God Hand.
That's friggin' sick, man.
And we get this game, and it redefines. It doesn't just reinvent or alter, it redefines the third-person
Absolutely.
shooter genre to the point where everybody is looking at this and trying to figure out how to prototype it and
Build on it,
learn
and
from it without build on it. That's the term.
yeah.
Trying to figure out how to build off what is basically perfection without just blatantly ripping it off.
No pun intended because of video games, but I mean, it literally was a game changer.
It literally was. It changed the way third-person games play and handle. And I'm sitting there with my face glued to the screen, plugging just about everything I can with lead aspirin. And we've also got the classics. And my 90s movie fan is just losing his mind, even though I don't think I really knew it at the time, because I was focused on not dying and killing everything in my way. And we get all the good stuff. We get the action hero, we get the one-liners, we get the monsters and the cheesy villains. We get freaking Ramon Salazar, who's dressed like mini Napoleon.
Once again, the
And-
plot is indecipherable and ridiculous, but man, is it fun.
The plot is rescue the damsel in distress, kill the bad guy, save the world, to quote Rick O'Connell.
Yeah, but I mean, what the bad guy's plot? What the hell's going on that island? It's just all nonsense.
Not even just the damsel in distress. The president's daughter.
Yeah, the
they
president's
topped up the
daughter.
notch of cheesy B action movies with it.
That is another one point of contention for Resident Evil 4. The only point of contention. So, and I forgot to say. Yeah. I meant to say earlier, this one was directed and not produced this time by Shinji Mikami. Produced by Hiroyuki Kobayashi. You play as the incredible Leon Kennedy, and I think this is the game where people loved him in 2, but in 4, he solidifies himself as a Solid Snake level badass. And
he solidified himself as the icon of the series.
But the only downside to the game, which they do correct for the remake, thankfully, is the endless protection of Ashley Graham, those segments where you have to escort her. And it was unfortunately a victim of tedious escort mission syndrome, but luckily that's just a small part of the game, and the parts that aren't that fucking rule.
Yeah. And it also introduced the best side mini game for the series in Mercenaries.
Oh, yes. So Mercenaries, Will, are you familiar with the Mercenaries mode in these games?
Did I get 5 stars on every map as every character in the game canon?
Fair enough. So my only criticism for Requiem is that there is not, as of the time of this recording, a Mercenaries mode for at least Leon. But I hear tell that they are going to announce a couple new modes and probably a new game plus and a couple other bonuses for that one. So if you were living in a future where those exist, I hope you're having fun, man. But
we don't know what's coming, but we know something is coming next month, like an expansion to the story and some kind of mini game mode,
which I'm hoping is a mercenary style mode.
Some people are saying that they hope it's a raid mode, which is on the Revelations games, but I don't. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, so Mercenaries, kind of blowing past some of the stuff. I don't even think I explained that ink ribbons are what you use to save. There you go. You can't save unless you use an ink ribbon. I meant to say that earlier. But Mercenaries mode is essentially a survival mode with combat challenges, with a increasingly ramped up difficulty. These games are so fun, but once they're done, you don't always just want to see the same story again, but you want to keep playing it. And I think they knew that with Resident Evil 4. They were like, this thing just feels incredible to play, so let's give them a playground to do it in. And that stuck around with the series pretty much ever since, and whole titles built around it almost.
Mercenaries has always been a post-release edition ever since Resident Evil 5 came out, so I wouldn't worry too much. We're probably going to be getting it. Yeah. I wasn't expecting it for 8, and I don't think we did get any sort of thing of the sort in 7, but
you're right, there's nothing like that in 7.
Fear. But we did get a Mercenaries post-launch release in every other installment that was action-focused, including the Revelations games. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much. Action fans.
Speaking of Leon, I was
getting it in Requiem.
When I was thinking about Leon earlier and the way that they use him in Requiem, where you have the absolute terrifying gameplay of the semi-helpless Grace, but then it's like if Leon kicked in the door, Requiem Leon kicked in the door of the house in 7, it would just be over. The game would just end right there.
Let me summarize it this way. Leon Kennedy has just arrived on the scene, and he's got a revolver.
The Requiem.
We surrender!
Oh, by the way, Tony, Will, at the time of this recording, and he's going to correct this by the time we get to part 3, Will has not even touched Requiem yet. I'm so stoked for him, so he doesn't even know about the revolver reference yet.
Heck yeah, dude. It's a good time.
It's a really good time.
I'm salivating, man. When I found out Leon was back on the scene, when I found out we were playing as a new character, this Grace girl, and especially since she's apparently connected to one of the characters from the Outbreak games.
Yeah, which is wild, and I'm glad they continued that continuity. And that's another offshoot we'll talk about another time.
Anyway, they need to bring back Outbreak.
You're damn right. They need to do full remakes for Outbreak as like a group campaign game.
I think, or just a new one as almost a live service game with changing maps and objectives and things to do. I think that would be really successful. I think a lot of people would like that.
They were ahead of their time.
There who have gotten into the Outlast Trials, which is a cooperative survival horror game that was recently added to a free game catalog, something modeled like that would be interesting.
Just while I have the opportunity, because, this is my show, I'm going to mention that Outlast fucking rules. That series is terrifying. I haven't played Trials. That's not really my style of gameplay, but Outlast 1 and 2, if you want to be scared shitless as an adult, play Outlast 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's a pretty accurate summary. I was actually going to ask if we wanted to do an Outlast episode sometime.
When a new title's coming out, we'll have a reason to. And then I would very much like to do that.
Yeah, we're not hurting for content right now. Movies, music, games.
Yeah,
folks.
absolutely. And in part 2, we're going to be talking about Resident Evil 5 through 8. And then in part 3, we're going to be talking about the mainline remake. So we're kind of going to be doing this episode again from a little bit of a different perspective. But I do have to say, I think if you want to get into Resident Evil, there are two types of, or if you're a fan and you just want to be hype again, there are two types of Resident Evil, in my opinion. Or three, actually. There's the original kind from like 1 through 3. There's the Resident Evil kind that's like 4 and 5, which is like and 6, especially 6. We're going to get to talk about 6. How fun is that going to be? Over-the-shoulder, hyper-action movie kind of thing. And then you have the third kind of Resident Evil, which is in 7 and 8, which is the first-person exploratory mode. And then in Requiem, it's like a perfect hybrid. But in my opinion, the best two Resident Evils you can get at the modern time, if you don't want to go back to the PS1 days, for old school Resident Evil is the 2 remake, I think is peak RE. And then the 4 remake might be like the best action game ever made. It's just amazing what they did with that remake. They took an incredible game that still holds up and made it even better, in my opinion, which I think is a real achievement.
I feel like as they were building up to the 4 remake, there was a certain intimidation factor. Like, they literally made something that redefined the genre, and they knew that if they didn't get this right, there was going to be riots.
Yeah, well, that's why no one really...
Did they nail it?
They nailed it. And no one cared about the Resident Evil 3 remake. It's not a bad game, but also no one really cared about Resident Evil 3 that much when it came out, so they were like, we can just have fun with this one. Gorgeous title, though, if nothing else.
Yeah.
I started playing the remake a while back, and I'm gonna again because it was fun, but there was just so much going on at the time, and by the time I was freed up again, I'd gotten into something else.
For sure.
Yeah, and RE3, the only reason they made RE3 on the PlayStation was because they had to contractually make 3 numbered titles for PS1. So they wanted originally the story to be Code Veronica for the 3rd game, but they made 3, just kind of shit it out there, threw it out, and then went on to make Code Veronica.
Yeah, I think they were being made kind of at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh, a couple things about development of the original Resident Evil I wanted to touch on that I thought were pretty cool. In some of our biggest successes, especially from Capcom, this was one of those titles that was being made like off the clock, essentially. Capcom did not care. The corporate heads did not care. They did not think it was going to be successful, and they just took these like fresh-faced, people with something to prove, and when they were done working on their main work, they asked them to contribute to Resident Evil. And man, maybe that's just what it takes sometimes, Yeah,
and it conceptually started as a remake of Sweet Home, since you mentioned Sweet Home earlier.
Yes.
That's why it was in a mansion with puzzles and item management.
Fun fact, there was a movie adaptation that came out the very same day as the first Resident Evil game, and a much more, it's not very good from what I can tell, but a much more fun fact is there is a pretty good Netflix adaptation. It's a Korean adaptation called Sweet Home that's pretty sick.
That has nothing to do with the Capcom Sweet Home. That was an adaptation of a webcomic.
Ah, well, jeez. All right, well, hey,
but there is a
I'm trying here.
Movie.
I'll keep this in to remind everyone we're not perfect.
I looked it up because I watched the Netflix show, and I'm like, oh, is this pretty good? I'm like, I don't think this has anything to do with the game, does it? And I looked it up and it was like, oh, it's a webcomic. Interesting.
That's cool. Interesting. Well, I learned something. I just assumed by the title, because it's such a specific title, I didn't even look up to confirm if it was or not. That's so funny. All right, well, never trust me again. I am your untrustworthy host, George Brandenburg. I've had so much fun talking about these titles with you guys. Do we have any final thoughts about Resident Evil 4, Leon, Chris, Jill, anything else we want to say before we break off and then come back for 5 through 8?
Well, first of all, as a guy with long hair, I want to know how Leon keeps that plait perfect.
As a 35-year-old whose beard is already going white, I'm jealous of his whole aesthetic there.
As a guy with no hair, I think you just need to experience the games.
All right. Well, excellent stuff. Thanks for joining us here today on our exploration of the first part of our Resident Evil 3-parter here. Will, let the people know where they can find you and what you're all about.
You can find me on YouTube as Alaskan Ghost. My channel's updated pretty inconsistently, but I did do full Let's Plays of a couple of games, including God of War Ragnarok and Dispatch. You can also find me here, not much else, because I'm not much of a social media presence, but whatever I do it because I enjoy it, and anyone else that enjoys it, well, I hope you do too, because isn't that what games and everything else is about? Just having fun?
Absolutely. Tony, let the people know what you're about, where they can find you.
Right now I'm on a hiatus, but I am on Twitch as McPatches_3D, and I am on Blue Sky as the same tag. Beyond that, just McPatches is what I use for a lot of my usernames. And I'm a big nerd. I'm all over the place, gaming, movies, TV. So you'll find a lot of takes.
That's why you're here.
About everything.
That's why you're here. What do you do on Twitch these days?
Well, like I said, I'm on a hiatus. I'm taking a little break. I generally focus on retro games, a lot of RPGs, and survival horror games.
Very cool. You going to do Sweet Home, you think?
It is on my list because it matches both boxes, and I really want to play it just so I can experience it. I know it's a really hard game, and if somebody dies, it's like almost impossible to finish.
And it's possible
because like their inventory's gone.
Once again, soft lock is a big introduction in that title. Well, very cool. My name is George Brandenburg. I'm part of the Halloween Horror Show. I play Discount Dracula. I'm also one of the hosts here on this podcast, obviously. You can find my work on Audible. I do audiobooks, primarily horror. Not a big social media presence, but, maybe that'll change with time. For right now, guys, I am so stoked about this series. I think we're killing it, and I think it's going to be a really good time. So thank you for joining me today.
Of course.
All right.
Been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Well, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time here on the Halloween Horror Pod, an extension of the Halloween Horror Hour, which you can see on Tubi, Plex, and the Roku channel, and, of course, YouTube. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.